Hey, in this tutorial I'm going to show you the easiest way to crochet a cardigan. That's using a hexagon cardigan method. Basically you just crochet 2 giant hexagons and sew them together and it creates a cardigan. It's just so easy, and you can make them look completely different depending on what yarn and the weight of the yarn you use. So for me, I want a chunky one, but I'm not using chunky yarn. I'm going to use 2 strands of DK, one black and one rainbow. On the label it will tell you like the best hooks and things to use, but I just ignore that because I like to use a bigger one for these. So the hook I'm going to use is an 8mm hook. The one for the meant to use for the yarn is 3.5 to 4mm, but I wanted it to be a bit more loose. So to start off with, you're going to make it pretty much exactly the same as a granny square. So you're going to make a slip knot to attach to your hook, and then we're going to chain 6. So you're going to grab the yarn with the hook and then pull the yarn through that hoop that's on the hook, and you're going to repeat that 6 times. Like I say, it's going to be made exactly the same method as the granny square, so you might want to look at my tutorial for that because that's going to be a bit more detailed than this. So once you've done that, you then want to go through that first stitch you made, and then you're going to grab the yarn, pull it through, and then pull it through the loop that's on the hook. Then the little tail bit you want to hold to one side, and you're going to just stitch that in as you're going around. So then you want to chain 3, and this is going to count as your first double crochet because we're going to make clusters of 3 double crochet in this. So for the first double crochet, you want to go through the hole in the middle. So you wrap around the yarn, put the hook through the middle, grab the yarn, pull it through, grab the yarn again, pull it through the first 2 hoops, grab it again, pull it through the second 2 hoops, and that's a double crochet. So wrap around the yarn, go through the hole, grab the yarn and pull it through to the front, grab the yarn again, pull it through 2 hoops, grab the yarn, pull it through another 2 hoops. And that's your first cluster of 3, because like I say, at first chain 3 counts as your first one. Then we're going to chain 2 for the corner, and then we're going to do another cluster of 3. So we're going to do that double crochet again. So we're wrapping around, go through, grab the yarn, pull it through the front. I'll do it a bit slower in my other tutorial as well. So you might want to just to, like I say, if you can't see this very well, check it on there. It's a bit more clearer. But we're going to do this 6 times. In a granny square you'd usually do it 4 times on the first row, but this one we're going to repeat it 6 times. So once you've gone back to beginning, the last thing you should have done was the chain 2, and now we're going to go through the top stitch of that first chain 3, grab the yarn and pull it through both hoops, and this is where we start on the second row. So we're just going to flip the yarn, flip your project round. We're going to flip it after every row, and then you go through the hole that you made for the corner where you chain 2, and then we're going to chain 3 again to start off with that first double crochet, and we're going to do another cluster. In each corner you'll be doing 2 clusters of 3 double crochet with 2 chains in the middle. And then as you get further and further along, like the more rows you do, in between those corners there'll also be gaps where you'll just put a single cluster of 3, and in between those you'll only have to chain once. So hopefully you can understand that. If you have too much trouble, just let me know and I'll actually produce an actual diagram so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So it was the first cluster, then I chained 2, go into the second cluster, and this will be the first corner done on the second row once I've done this last double crochet. And then we're going to go over to the next hole So that's the first corner. So we're going to chain 1 just to go over to the next hole, and then we're going to do 2 clusters in this hole as well, because we're still working on the corners. And as you can see, between the last set of double crochets and this one I'm now starting, there's now an extra hole there, and that's where the single cluster of 3 double crochets would be. So you do this all the way around, and there's a yarn bath there. That's one of the problems if you use the yarn from the middle of the ball. Sometimes you get this yarn bath. Usually if you pull a certain way, it will just unravel itself and it's not too messy. This is what it looks like when I've finished the second row. So because I finished on the corner, the last stitch I would have done would be a chain 1 to get to the first corner I started at. And as you can see, you can see where the corners are, and then these new holes in between the corners. So I needed to do stitch 1, chain 1, and now I have to find the top stitch of the first chain 3 again to go up on the next level. Put that yarn through both hoops, flip it again, then I go underneath that hole, grab the yarn, put it through to start off with, and then I'm in the middle now. I'm not actually at a corner, so this place is just going to have one triple set of 3 double crochets. So again, going to start off with chain 3 for the first double crochet, and then I'm going to do 2 actual double crochets. And because this is a single one, go into a corner, you only need to chain 1. So there's the cluster, then you chain the 1, and then we go back to a corner, where again there'd be 2 clusters with 2 chains in between it. That's 1, 2, 3, and then we'll do all this the way around. So the corners will always have 2 clusters, the holes in between will have 1. And you just keep going until you get to the size you want. And how you do that is you fold the project in half, and then it will make like an L shape, and it'll basically you'll see what it looks like. So I made one quite large because I wanted it baggy. I'll actually show you what I mean in a minute, like a smaller version, because you can't see because this was just too big to have on camera. So this is the sleeve, and then the body part of it, and then you need to make 2 and like sew them together. They do stitch up quite easily as well, and you can use so many different yarns. This is like really fine yarn, it's really kind of light, and I'm making one using this as well. So like I said, the one I'm making at the moment is like really chunky. This one's really fine. I wanted a light one that was more flowy, and I used a fairly large hook for this as well, so it was really loose. And I'm going to make this like a lot longer, this one. So depending on the yarn, they can come out looking completely different. So it's nice to have a few different ones and play around with different yarns and hook sizes, because if you want one that's a bit more loose, use a bigger hook. If you want one that's got like less holes, use a smaller hook and tighter stitches. So basically what I was saying is you'll fold it over, and then as you can see it kind of looks like half a cardigan already. And you just sew along the top to close that off, and then you add another one to the other side and just sew the backs together, and that's pretty much your cardigan. You can make the sleeves longer as well. If you make so you've got the length enough but the sleeves are maybe a bit too short, you can just add extra rows afterwards once you've finished. Just keep sewing around in the round rather than lines, or you can do it around the bottom if it's not long enough, just until you've got the length that you want. I was lucky though, because the size I made, once I folded in half, the sleeves were actually the right size, and the length was good as well. So this is what it looked like when I made 2 of them. So I'm basically going to sew the top together and then sew these together, so just the back sides of it, and then the front will be open, and then that's a fully working cardigan. So we're almost done. So it's really easy once you get to the hang of doing all the stitches. So I didn't do any fancy stitch at all to put this together. So along the top of the sleeves, I literally just used some of the black yarn I was already using. Made sure it was all lined up, all the holes and everything was lined up, stitches were lined up. And I just put some black yarn onto the needle. I attached it. Just attached it using a couple of knots, nothing fancy, and then just a really simple stitch along the top, and it's held it in place nicely. I have worn this a few times already, so I just go through a stitch through both sides, pull it up from the back, and then just go around the front again. And I just done this along the top edge of both sides. You can use a different stitch if you want, depending on what you feel comfortable with. So once the tops are all stitched together, we're now going to stitch together the back. So again, you want to line this up. You don't want it a bit all wonky. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. Use the same black yarn. You can crochet these together as well, that way I haven't found a nice way without leaving like a very big seam. So again, just tying this off, lining the stitches up, and just going in from one side to the other, and then going back again. And then I do this all the way from the top down to the bottom, tie it off, hide the ends and cut off the excess, and that is it. You've made your cardigan. And like I say, if the sleeves are right length but like the body isn't, you can just add more rows to those once it's all put together, and it's done. So thanks for watching. Hope you could actually follow it okay, and see you in my next video. Bye.